on the History Channel, we're introducing a new segment called
Blast from the Past. And today's very special theme is the 60s.
Hello guys, we're going to sing a song. Feel free to join in. We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. Like sarcasm in the classroom. Teacher leaves them kids alone. Hey.
Okay, go.
These people, commonly known as hippies, have been trying to spread peace and harmony, leading nonviolent anti-war protests, singing their radical songs, and spreading the word of peace. While a part of prominent music culture, there were also other forms of music taking stage, defining the 60s as an age of new music.
In the ongoing space race between the U.S. and Soviet Russia, we have attempted to send a man to the moon.
Apollo astronauts Roger Chaffee, Edward White, and Gus Grissom lose their lives in a tragic flash fire aboard their grounded space capsule. The tragedy occurred during a simulated countdown for the first flight of the Apollo program, whose goal is to put a man on the moon by 1970.
Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. 10 ground control to Major Tom.
Wow, what an adventure!
100 years after slavery was outlawed, African Americans started demanding more public and private rights, starting with protests and even riots to make their voices heard. MLK and Malcolm X, major figures with different views, led the rebellion with marches such as the March on Washington. Another type of right were advocated for the Stonewall and Rebellion, trying to achieve rights for the Inguavita LGBTQA community.
In 1963, a short time after his election, John F. Kennedy was killed in Dallas as he was driving through the streets.
Pew, pew, pew.
No.
Shortly after midnight on June 5th, 1968, after Kennedy defeated Senator Eugene McCarthy in the California presidential primary.
Years later, Martin Luther King Jr., a public figure in the fight for civil rights for African Americans, was shot at the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons.
During his presidential campaign in 1960, John F. Kennedy had promised the most ambitious domestic agenda since the New Deal reforms that sought to eliminate injustice and inequality to the United States. But the new frontier ran into problems right away. The Democrats' congressional majority depended on a group of Southerners who loathed the plan's interventionist liberalism and did all they could to block it. The War on Poverty is the unofficial name for the legislation introduced by the United States President Lyndon B. Johnson during the State of the Union address on January 8th. The speech led to the United States Congress to pass the Economic Opportunity Act, which established.
The war on poverty was expensive, too expensive, especially as the war in Vietnam became the government's top priority. There was simply not enough money to pay for the war on poverty and the war in Vietnam. Conflict in Southeast Asia had been going on since the 1950s, and President Johnson had inherited a substantial American commitment to the anti-communist South Vietnam. Soon after he took office, he escalated the commitment into a full-scale war. In 1964, Congress authorized the president to take all necessary measures to protect American soldiers and their allies from the communist Viet Cong. Within days, the draft had began.
Well, that's all the time for today. Be sure to watch for more and don't miss the next
Blast from the Past!